And now they're letting us know this meeting is being
That
recorded.
voice is so authoritative.
I know. I always feel like I've gotten in trouble because the way she says it. This meeting is being recorded. All right,
Maybe
everybody.
she's a nun.
Oh gosh, don't bring back flashbacks of Catholic school. My name is Malika Albrecht, and I am the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild, and this is our lovely Thursday book launch. Today we get to celebrate with Joan Leotta, and we've already heard some great stories, so we may have to circle back around to some of those. But I do want to point out that I put her bio in the chat section, and also there is an amazing link in the chat section for you that Joan put in there, and this is where you can access her most two recent chapbooks with Origami Press, and they are downloadable free. And tell us something about Origami Press that you had told me about how they create these chapbooks.
Well, I'll show it to you too. They're really an interesting press. I found them because of the name. As a story performer, and one of the little art things I like to do, I love origami, which is the Japanese art of folding paper. And actually, I have a friend who, when she got a hold of it, she's now known all over the world for telling stories and creating origami things at the same time. I'm not in her league, but I can still make a paper crane with the best of them. So when I saw this Origami Press, I thought, wow, what's that? Looked into them, and they're a legitimate group, and they don't take everything you send them. So, that pleased me, because then I know they were legitimate. And so I published with them a couple of years ago, and then they had a call out again, and the link should take you to both of my pieces. They're under my name. Awesome. And this is the one that we're talking about that came out during the pandemic. And here you go. Now you can see the time. They provide the cover art. Okay. And the reason it's origami is because you have to fold it into a little booklet, and it can be used as a bookmark. You can take it with you. I mean, it's really cool, and they do such a nice job. And I gave it a title, Morning by Morning, and they picked up on the dolphin. I don't know, you probably couldn't tell what that was. I'm showing you, and you can't even see it. The dolphin in one of my poems, and they put that there. So that lovely piece of cover art, and you could stick in your wallet, stick in your purse, give them out to kids at Halloween. You know, they're just really fun. So you have to be careful of length, although I do have one that ran to 2 pages with them. But when I amassed some, and I was putting some stuff together for a second longer chapbook, I realized that I had a group that were on Dawn, and I could have scattered them through other places. I said, I'm going to see what Origami's doing, and they were having a call. So I sent it to them.
That's awesome. Yeah. I just love the idea and the concept. And so people weren't seeing the link, so I've put it in there again. So y'all can check it. Yeah, it just must have cut it off or whatever. But so it's there again. Just to make sure. But I love Joan, when you sent me a copy of it and I realized that you could print it out and fold it up, I thought, well, what a great idea for a press. So I'm glad that you went with it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. And also, I did want to bring up that, she has a lot of things that she does. And so, performances of folk and personal tales often celebrate the value of, and I am going to lose this place real quick. I knew I was. Hi, Paul, glad you're here. The value of the seemingly ordinary moment and the joy of food, family, nature, and strong women. She's originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, lived for many years in the DC area, and now we're lucky enough to have her on the beaches of North Carolina.
Actually, I've been here almost 20 years now.
Wow.
It amazes me that I've been here that long now. So.
Now, have you always been in the Calabash area, or?
Yes, we've always lived in this house since we've been down here. And when I was, when we first moved here, I didn't mind driving as much, but now it's harder for me because I can't drive at night.
Yeah.
So if I go someplace, I'm committed to having to spend the money to stay over. Yeah. That's the other part of everything being middle and west of me. And it makes it hard because as a story performer, I have that same problem because most of the performance opportunities are middle and west.
Uh-huh.
So I'm the rep for the southwest corner, which is this. I don't know why it's called Southwest, because we're near the ocean. I still can't figure that out. But I'm the North Carolina Writers Network rep for Southwest Brunswick, and then I'm also the tall, what are we called? Tar Heel Tellers, the North Carolina Storytelling Guild. I'm also the coastal rep, but my region runs the entire length of the coast and west. So I have about 30 counties.
Wow.
5 people in my region. So if you all want to join the Tar Heel Tellers, you're welcome.
Oh, Karen, I could so see you doing that. I could so see
it.
you telling stories.
We're going to start, we want to start some classes for people to show you how to put together a program and all of that things. So,
well, will you let us know about that?
If I will when we do
Post it on Facebook, because I actually would be interested in eavesdropping or at least being a part of it.
And we're trying to do it for free, so people come.
I'm a fan right now.
So, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely a fan. Well, we're going to turn it over to you. I'm going to put you as the spotlight. We are so glad to have you here, Joan. Welcome so much.
Oh, thank you.
I look forward to hearing your work.
My face is so big now.
I know.
So did you, now I thought we were going to sort of do an interview, but we're not.
Well, we do questions and answers, but we can also do more relaxed stuff if you would like to do it that way. It's totally.
I'm happy to do what you want. You have to be aware though, that as a storyteller, I can go on forever.
I kind of like that about you already and have already enjoyed the stories. So I just want to turn it over to you so we can keep you going.
You may want to see us. You may want to step on me to get a word in edgewise. My poor husband complains about that. So he's tried the mute, but it doesn't work. So, these, when I came to North Carolina, I had been writing poetry. I mean, I've been writing poetry since I was, in grade school, really. I've been writing everything since I was in grade school. I did go to a Catholic school, but I had actually an excellent experience. And in fact, one of my nuns, I didn't find this out until later. She started a school paper when I was in 5th or 6th grade, a little mimeograph thing. Do you remember mimeograph? And the ink, which you smelled, that was great. But I don't know which was better, the ink or the writing, But everybody got to turn in something who wanted to, and almost every issue, I would have something in. And when my dad died in 1987, I went back to visit the school. I wanted to show my children the school. They went to public school, my children, and I went to school in an old Victorian mansion with the nuns. It was a private school. It wasn't a parochial school, a regular one. So I wanted them to see this place because it was fantastic. And I took them in and they saw the sunroom and then the fabulous wallpaper from when the original people had it. And then they saw the big staircase that we used to come down at Halloween, but it was like a staircase out of a movie. And anyway, there were a few nuns left and they were running it as something else for the community then. They had closed the school. And Sister Anne told me, she said, "Joan, do you write still? Do you still like to write?" And I said, "Yes, sister. I was writing for the Washington Post and all the papers in the DC area at the time, and a lot of magazines, business writing, and so on." I said, "I've always liked to write. I didn't have as much time for poetry and short stories as I wanted, but I said, I still write." And she said, "I started that newspaper to encourage you." And I was so touched because not only had she wanted to encourage me, but she found a way to do it that would encourage every other child in the school, children who weren't known to her, but who liked to write. And maybe children who were just going through trying out that writing as an artistic skill. But she encouraged all of us by that project. And I felt very honored that my desire to write, I mean, I used to write poems at the bottom of every school paper.
I forgot.
She was a wonderful person. She and the nun who turned 100, who called me by my cousin's name when we came in. And Sister Ann didn't know my cousin Regina, who was 18 the year I was born. My father was the youngest of 13. His oldest brother had, and she said, "Oh, you're Regina." And I said, "No, sister, I'm Joan." And at first Sister Ann was all worried that mother was, DeChantal was a little, well, she was turning 100. And I said, "Sister, my cousin Regina and I are like double image of each other." And it's no wonder that she would, of course, turn back to the older, version. But anyway, so that's where I really got a lot of start in writing. And I've always also been a storyteller. My grandmother was a great storyteller. And I love to be on stage. Whenever we had to be inside for recess, we used to be in the auditorium, and I'd climb onto the stage and start doing a comedy routine because I can't sing or dance. So I would start doing a routine because I was allowed to stay up as late as I wanted. So I would watch all the shows that were on with the comedians and the people who made noises and all that stuff, and I'd perform. So that's kind of who I was. I also got to write the St. Patrick's Day play every year, even though I'm not Irish at all. That's kind of my story. If you want to hear some, go ahead.
I was going to say, those are some awesome stories. And I was going to ask you, keep doing that. And we would love to hear one or two poems from, any of the books that you have, maybe the one that was just reviewed.
Yeah.
Finish in Line Press. And then also two.
That's on the shelf. Hold on a sec.
Also the two from Origami Press, because all of that would be great.
Well, I've got the one from Origami there. Here's the.
And I wondered if the picture on the back behind you was of your grandmother.
No, that's my mother.
Okay.
My mother married late, and I'm sorry, and I married late.
Uh-huh.
So my mother was my mother was 31 or 32 when she had me. So that picture was done in 1915. It's on glass. And her brother was the only other one in the family. There were 4 of them to have their pictures on glass, because after that they stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So it was, during World War One. Well, not World War One. We weren't in World War One yet. So we weren't until 1917. I was actually in economics, and I was a political science major in college, and economics is what I have my master's in. So in international relations. I sort of planned my whole college career to try to get to Europe.
But it sounds like you have traveled a lot, because you were talking about.
My father, when I told him I love to travel, my grandmother loved to travel, and she went to Egypt when I was 4, and I remember there's a picture of me standing next to a boat cake like this, because I wasn't going with her, and so I always liked to travel. And my dad just told me finally one day, he said, because I said, I want to spend a year abroad when I'm in college, because college was a foregone conclusion. But my dad sat me down and he said, honey, he said, that's for rich girls. We don't have the money to send you there, for that. And I said to myself, we'll see, Dad. But my father would give me anything he could. He was wonderful, but he was trying to not let me be disappointed. And instead, that just made me determined I was going to go. So I hunted out, you're talking about grants. I hunted out scholarship money for everything I did in school. And when I was a sophomore, I worked for one of the professors, and he invited me. He was an African specialist, and he invited me to go with him and a couple other professors to Africa for the summer after my sophomore year. And I went.
Yay.
And the only other girl who was on the trip, there were 5 students, 3 professors. The only other girl was the art student who was actually from Pittsburgh. And she was a lovely person. But I got very angry with her because we were going to travel afterwards. In those days, you could cash your plane ticket and use it then to change your route and go different places. And so we saved up money from our per diem. It was a government funded grant. We saved up money. My parents gave me some money and we got you rail passes and we were going all around. And we were 1 week into Germany and she said, I'm homesick. I'm going back to Pittsburgh. And I said, goodbye, because I'm not. So unfortunately, she's a lovely person, but I never got to be real close with her after that because I stayed and I traveled all through Europe by myself.
Oh, wow.
Summer of 1967. So that was great. And then I found out that because I took Spanish in college, they had scholarship money to study in Madrid. So I toddled my little self down to the office and I spent the last 2 quarters of my college year in Madrid, my college career. I didn't come back for graduation because, hey, I could either spend the summer in Europe traveling again, or I could come back and sit in the hot sun in Athens, Ohio, getting my degree, handed down with 3,000 other people. And I said, no, thanks. My mother was thrilled because she didn't want to sit in the hot sun either. No, she didn't want to do that. And then when the same thing happened, then when I went to Johns Hopkins for my graduate work because why were they my first choice? Because they have a school in Bologna. So it's a 2-year master's program. So I was 1 year in Washington, D.C. and 1 year in Bologna, Italy. Most people do Bologna first so they can then spend their Washington year getting job connections. And not me, because my parents asked me not to go again right away to Europe. So I went to Washington first and then to Bologna. Yeah, and that's when I learned Italian because my father refused to teach me at home. It was, you had to be American. And to be American, you didn't speak Italian at home.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
But now I do, which my dad was happy about. I mean, my dad was happy that I did all these things. I sometimes wonder if what my dad would think if that I identify myself as a poet, because he always said, don't be a poet if you're going to be a writer. He loved that I was a journalist and all that, because he said, they don't make any money. And I thought, well, now I'm retired. So yeah. But he was right, because I got paid for a poem when I was 14 and they're not even paying that much anymore. So I got when I was 14. So
that was the high watermark.
The high watermark, yeah, for poetry. But I'll read you a poem about my dad. By the way, my dad's favorite poets were Keats and Shelley. So that'll tell you a little bit about his view of life. He was very much a romantic. My mom didn't like poetry. So that gives you a little view of her, plus the other things I've told you. Okay. This is from my book, Languid Lusciousness with Lemon, which starts out with a poem that was inspired by a painting at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England. I love writing ekphrastic poetry. I write a lot of ekphrastic poetry, but began as an ekphrastic poem and it kind of branched out. But anyway, here's a poem about my dad, and it did come from a dream too. Dreaming across the sticks. My father walks into my room wearing his long tan trench coat. A finely blocked felt hat tops his jet black wavy hair. He tamps down the tobacco in his cherrywood pipe, then turns to me, his brown eyes twinkling. He steps back into a poorly lit hallway I do not recognize. Dad removes his coat and sits in an orange plastic chair. Coat on his lap, he draws softly on the pipe and nods toward me. Cherry-flavored tobacco smoke soothes me. Dad is waiting for me, as always, through theater classes, piano lessons, dance lessons. Patiently enmeshed in his own thoughts, he waits without complaint. Suddenly I wake. I'm at home. No hallway, no chair, no cherry tobacco, only the smell of coffee. My father smiles from his photo. Some say dreaming across the Styx means ferryman Charon will soon arrive. Not for me. Instead of Charon, my own beloved father waits patiently to ferry me across the Styx in his white 1960 Thunderbird. That's one of my favorite poems about my dad. He was really quite the special person. My mom was special too. There's some other funnier stories. You'd have to kind of know her. Okay, I'll read you this one from the Morning by Morning. I mean, these are just little poems, but I tried. A lot of times I'll set myself the goal of writing a poem a day. Being a Tupelo Press 30/30 writer really established that for me. And I don't always do it anymore, but I can pick up the discipline now much more easily than I could before I did that. I kind of felt like, do any of you watch the cooking shows? Guys Grocery Games, or home, what is that one, chef, where the chefs compete and this other judge. Anyway, I often feel like I'm the home chef with all of the culinary school trained people, because I don't have an MFA, and I didn't, even though I probably read as many books and I took almost as many English courses for electives as the English majors did. I wasn't an English major. I was busy studying all those political people. Okay, moments before dawn. Before the sun transforms night's worries into day's sure steps, dampness stains my cement drive, thanks to evening showers that played on the roof, keeping me awake all night. Streaks of cloud play among still glittering bits of star. Moon is a dark round wafer sitting on a silver chalice rim. Weaker, he has already surrendered primacy to sun, who will soon arise and reign. That's moments before dawn. We stopped getting a morning paper now, so I don't do as many dawn poems. I'm up, but I'm not outside the house. I have to look behind, take pictures. So, okay. So would you like to hear, let me see, this one is, well, I suppose I should read you one about my mother. Well, the one in here though is after she was in the nursing home, when she was quite diminished. Actually, more of my essays show what she's like. Even though she and I kind of, well, mothers and daughters sort of, I mean, my daughter and I will bump heads, but this is a poem I wrote after being in the visiting her in the nursing home one time. Her condition got so bad. As I told you, I was older when I married too, and so when she was 80, I had children in high school and junior high, and then plus that she had her days and nights mixed up after she had a massive stroke, and she didn't always know where she was or anything, and she tried to escape all the time, and so I couldn't watch her and be a mom. It was all on me. I mean, my husband had a 12-hour workday. He'd leave in the morning, spend an hour commuting to downtown DC from Fairfax, and then an hour coming back. And it was, he was happy she would come to live with us, but she didn't, it wasn't going to happen. So in the nurse home, I would visit her sometimes 2 times, maybe 3 times a day, just not stay always really long, but in between things I was doing with the kids and my storytelling. and my freelance writing business. So here's the poem, The Conversation. My daughter comes and goes, Mom says. I'm your daughter, I announce. I stand by her straight green chair and take her hand in mine. Her head turns toward me, but her eyes stare without focus. Bending toward her, I ask, would you like a drink of water? My daughter comes and goes, she answers. From her pink plastic pitcher, I pour the water into a cup. I pour until I am empty. I place the cup in her hand, closing her fingers around it, one by one. She raises the water to her open lips, but tilts the cup too soon. She wants to drink, but cannot find her mouth. I mop the spill and get more water. I raise the fresh cup to her lips. She smiles, sips, and slips her hand over mine. My daughter comes and goes, she says. My mother too, I answer. Hug her hard and kiss her. So that's my mom. And she was 1 year old in that picture behind me.
Oh, wow.
So I was really happy to find it. Actually, it wasn't up in our house when I was a little girl. I never saw it. It was packed away. I didn't find it until after she died. So it's quite precious.
No, I really like that. And I very much enjoyed that poem a
Oh,
lot,
thank you.
related to it a lot.
She was a redhead, by the way, Malika.
Oh, really?
A natural redhead until later in life.
Yeah, my mother was a dark brunette and had 3 redheaded kids. And she said,
Oh,
everybody
wow.
thinks I'm the babysitter.
Oh, well, my mother, with the red hair and green eyes, nobody thought she was Italian. And that used to really make her angry. I'm Italian. There's 2 little pockets of redheads in Italy.
I was going to say, yeah, there's pockets, because we have redheaded Italians in our family as well.
Mm-hmm. She's from the pocket near Naples, which is where her mother was from. Her father had coal black hair, and my grandmother had coal black hair. And 2 of her her 2 sisters and her brother had coal black hair, the kind with the blue highlights, really pretty. And they had this white skin, and her skin was more like mine, more of a slightly olive, odd for a redhead, but that way. But she couldn't stay out in the sun like I can. She had to come in like most redheads do. She had to come in, but she was a riot. I wouldn't have believed that it was really her red hair but she had a lock of it as a child. From her childhood time before it grayed, and by the time I was born and knew her, she was dyeing it all the time, and she would experiment with hair, the different colors and everything.
I relate.
Yes, I thought of her actually when you told me about you were changing your hair color. I thought, boy, my mother would like her a lot.
So I wanted to, keep going with the poetry, but I also wanted to, talk about the fact that you do a lot of different genres. And how do you translate what develops into an essay, or what develops into a poem, or a short story, or a story that you tell as a storyteller?
Well,
when you're first working on it, or does it kind of tell you as you go along?
It's a little bit of both. As a storyteller, I do not tell many personal stories because actually I'm a very shy, I know it's hard for you to believe, I'm a very shy and private person. You find more out about me in my poetry than anybody who's ever seen me on stage. I tell very few personal stories. Now, if you really looked into the stories that I choose and the way that I adapt them, if I were ever important enough for somebody to analyze, they would be able to tell. They would see the connections, because I can see the connections between what I choose. I'm actually consistent in my perspective. The only place where I really deviate in my perspective somewhat is in my mystery fiction. And when I send it to my daughter, sometimes she says, Mom, that was a little dark. I just had a revenge. I told you I like ekphrastic poetry. And one of the artists who I really like, I haven't written as much poetry about her as I probably will. I'm setting out to pick 5 or 6 of hers and actually do a grouping. Artemisia Gentileschi. You may have heard of her. She was raped as a young woman in Rome. Her father was a painter. And she was raped by a student of his, who was also supposed to be a friend. And her father did take him to court. This is in the Middle Ages. This is the time of the Medici, okay? And the Rome court did convict him, but they didn't do anything to him. They let him go. So her father got so mad, he moved to Florence. And that's where she became friends with the Medicis and became one of the first women to be accepted into the Accademia in Florence. She hobnobbed with all the biggies. Her talent is amazing if you look her up. And anyway, I like her work and everything. So I thought, did she ever, her writing too is beautiful. She talked a lot about be your own person and don't let, essentially don't let the idiots get you down, but also a little deeper than that. She had a daughter and a son, and the son died. And I decided that her daughter should avenge her. And so I wrote a story, and I knew just the magazine that would take it too, Yellow Mama it's called. And I sent it to Yellow Mama, and the editor said, I love this story. And in my story, Artemisia is avenged by her daughter, who poisons the guy because poison was quite a common way to get rid of people then. But I also have what's called a frame story around it, where a modern girl, for reasons when, she poisons somebody who she needs to gain revenge on as well, in connection with Artemisia, because she finds letters that tell about what the daughter did. So you see, that evil little thought was never going to be a poem. And that is not consistent with my personality. You don't have to worry if you come here to dinner. I will not add poison. But I have written several mystery stories which have allowed me to go in a different direction. Perhaps I have some Medici blood in me, although I doubt it, because I'm strictly Southern Italian. So it's the Naples was quite a hotbed of poisoning. But so when I start out with an idea, if I look outside, I'll generally think about it as a poem really first. I'll have just a quick idea, but sometimes it goes into like a longer thing, a narrative poem. And sometimes the narrative poems really should be flash fiction. And I'm working with a couple of women now, other poets, we read each other our poetry, and we're over Zoom because they live in Greensboro. And one of them told me, she said, that's not a poem, Joan, not the way you have it. You'd have to change it around. And I respect her. And I thought, okay, do I want to change it? Or do I want to change it into a piece of flash fiction? And so it's coming out on Spill Words. It's called, I forget what it's called. Something about there are never enough hours in the day. And you can see why that theme would have you would think about a poem perhaps, but it just kind of kept coming. And I always think in beginning, middle, and end because of my storytime background. So I'm trying to, I try to work with my poems that way too. And if my biggest lack is musicality. Sometimes I'll try to write in a rhyming way just to make it musical, then I'll cut that out because I'm usually bad at the rhyming thing. So, the rhyme wasn't, shouldn't run what I'm writing. But I try to hear it, but I don't hear the music the way as someone more talented with a musical background or perhaps a classical background in writing poetry would have, because I don't like Kelly or Keats or Shelley like my dad did. I have his books, but I don't really read them. So I really I really look at things. And so usually in those cases, the piece of art itself defines itself. So even in Ekphrastic, actually, I was doing one Ekphrastic. It was for an abstract, and it was selected. It's sort of a little contest that's run every month, and I was selected as one. And because I wrote a piece of flash fiction for it, where each of the objects talked to the person. So there's a series of little narratives. So
it would be nice to see the art that inspired your poem side by side at some point.
Well, actually, sorry, I don't have it. I don't have any of them around, actually.
I could probably, if you wanted, I could probably Google the image and post it.
If you go on, there's one that you can Google really quickly and just get one.
Okay.
And it's in Pomelian. If you put my name in.
Yeah.
I did it with Robbie Nestor.
You were part of the anthology that they did.
That was part of Robbie Nestor's anthology.
Yeah, and we actually had them on here, and it was fabulous. So this is, and they did the artwork with the poems themselves. So this was your Is She Yearning to Go Out? And it's got the Cape Morning by Edward Hopper. So let me get to screen share, Joan. And then if you want to read that poem, that would be
sure. If you could, you're going to put the poem on the screen too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Otherwise, I won't have it.
Let me.
It's in my computer somewhere, but
Yep. Let me get to. Hang on, just a second. It'll just take me a moment to get to it, and then we can do both of them, which would be really kind of cool. There we go.
I think I only have one. It's a mistake. Joan Matza is next to me there. Mine is the Is She Going to Go Out with Hopper. I only have one in that issue. Yeah.
All right.
How about that?
And here's the painting.
Yeah, the painting is beautiful. I love Hopper. He has such a sense of, he seems to portray loneliness so well, but not really. I don't think of the people as being lonely. I mean, like, oh, I'm so sad because I'm lonely. I think of them being alone and content a lot of times. Like the person in the diner, the famous one in the diner. I think of that person as being quite happy to be the only person there. But anyway, this is the poem. You're going to go back to the writing now, right? So I can read it.
And the solitary is what Laura pointed out, that solitary, can be different from being lonely.
Right.
There we go. So we're at your poem?
Yeah. Is she yearning to go out? She is alone, leaning into the bay window, face almost against the glass, looking on her outer world, grass gone wild, bathed in the east bright early light, ocean just over the ridge. When I look out of my kitchen bay, my ken is a world of birds darting here and there, tamed grasses neatly trimmed, even in this time of pandemic. Ocean, yes, it's near, but not close enough to see or hear. My world continues up to the fence. Her eyes peer far beyond any boundaries. Thank you. Alas, the size of our worlds beyond our artful bays matters not at all, for we are both confined inside, waiting until we can safely tread those grasses, run and dip our feet into the ocean.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank you.
And I did, Paul was saying he has to run, but thanks, Joan, for your
Thank you for coming, Paul. I appreciate the fact that you came.
And I love what Karen wrote here. Hopper's work always feels pensive to me.
Yes.
And Laura agreed to that. And Karen, the line, my world continues up to the fence, really resonated with you. That was lovely. Thank you for doing that, Joan. I thought it would be nice to see the artwork in some of your ekphrastic work.
And see, you're a lot more tech savvy than I am. I couldn't have done that.
Well, I can push the buttons, and I oftentimes Paul has guided me through, but thank you. Yeah, no, I've learned how to do screen share so that we could do that. But they did a lovely job with that anthology, and they did
Oh, yes.
match up the artwork with the reading. So it was nice to have that. And that's wonderful that you were part of that anthology as well.
Yeah, we got to select the piece of art. She had certain pieces, and you were allowed to select the one you wanted, but only one.
Yeah.
So that's the one I chose. And I really, as I say, that's one of my favorite things to do. I've always loved art and museums. Pittsburgh has actually quite a lovely museum, Carnegie Institute, and I think its correct name is the Carnegie Museum of Art. And actually, a woman who lived next door to us used to work for Helen Clay Frick. And Virginia was Helen Clay Frick's assistant. I called her Virginia because she was in her 40s when we moved in next door to them, and I was 4. But she lived with her mom and dad, and I lived with my mom and dad. So when they introduced me, this is Mr. and Mrs. Lewis and Miss Lewis, Virginia, and my mother called her Virginia, and I said, well, she's my friend. She lives with her mommy and daddy. And I used to go over there and visit and everything, ask for Virginia. So she loved it. I called her Virginia. She told my mother not to correct me. So anyway, though, Virginia worked for Helen Clay Frick, and Virginia was an art professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And Helen Clay Frick donated quite a bit of money to the University of Pittsburgh. But when she wanted to build a new museum for Renaissance era art and pre-Renaissance, the last bit of the medieval period, the University of Pittsburgh didn't want that. They wanted a museum that, yeah, it could have that in it, but they wanted to be able to run it the way they wanted. And Helen Clay Frick got mad at them. And she had an estate still at the end of my street. And so she built her museum on that estate. And my neighbor toured Italy. Well, Virginia had already done the touring Italy in college thing, but Virginia toured Italy buying artwork for that museum. So I have a real personal connection to that museum and that art. So, I mean, I really love art. My aunt was an artist, and I used to go to the library in Pittsburgh, and then I'd walk through the library. There used to be a corridor you could walk through, and it was free to enter the museum anytime you wanted. So while I was doing my homework and studying in the library, I'd go to the museum too, look at the Roman sculptures, the Impressionists, you know, whatever I felt like. So it was quite nice. It's a lovely city in a lot of ways, Pittsburgh. I don't know if any of you know it, but it's a great place to grow up. And it's very committed to the arts. So even now, my cousins still live there, so I still get to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing the like how I love that you have a lot of different interests, and I think that really shows when you're talking that all these things kind of connect and branch out. I did want to return to when you were saying that you oftentimes participate in Tupelo's 30 and a daily writing practice. And I know Karen has that daily writing, and you have been going now, Karen, for 280 million days.
Something like that. Yeah, I realized the other day that I miscounted, so I'm actually at like 350 some odd days.
Wow.
Right?
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. 30 days. And actually I did February, so there were only 28 days.
It's all good. All good.
I did it twice. I don't know if that counts.
Oh, it does. It does count. And so I wanted to revisit that, Joan, with the concept of, you know, when you sit down to write, do you have an idea of where you're going? How, you know, what's your process is really what I'm asking.
Well, it differs for different types of writing, actually. For a poem, I usually know what I want, although I'll still let the poems and the images surprise me. Once the images are done on a piece of paper, they may be one way, and then when I go back and revise, I may see that those images are really different, and I'll just tweak it slightly. Usually though, it doesn't change complete direction. Generally the image rules. But when I'm writing a piece of fiction, the characters rule. I establish who my characters are and where they're going to go. And sometimes when I send something out and it comes back rejected, I've been very fortunate to have some very loving editors who will say, this was okay, but really, you know, the one part was really off, or, you know, in a nice way, they say it in a nice way, but they'll say, and I'll say, huh, maybe I want to change that, maybe I don't. But I realized it took me a long time because my critique group doesn't meet anymore. And I used to love to take short stories to them. There was a really excellent critique group. But the Artemisia story, for instance, started out just being the story of the daughter writing a long letter, telling her mother how she took revenge for her. And then I realized that when I took a look at it after a while, and a couple of friends of mine read it, and it wasn't working, something wasn't working. I realized it needed a frame because that would also break it up. I really think of it as think of a short story almost as if it were a performance piece. It has to have an arc. A poem does too, especially a longer poem, but a story has to have an arc where it also gives you relief from some of the emotion that you have. This story ran high with emotions. I mean, rape alone, it's pretty heavy duty. So I had to balance the emotions and vengeance, and, you know, pretty dark, as my daughter said, but I had to put balance in there. You know, Chicago pizza shop, what did they order? A few little details, you know, they help ground it in, you know, a way. And actually even there's a couple of poems that I've written about our son's death. Only one of them is really completely dark, but the others all have an arc that allows my reader to breathe, because I'm not writing it just for my own, you know, relief. For that, I should hire a psychiatrist, right? You know, but if I want you to read it too, it has to have something in it for you. And it has to be something that you can apply to your life. Or maybe you didn't experience the same kind of sorrow that I have, but everybody has sorrow. So I want people to relate to it. So I think about that, and not always in the first draft, but I do think about it before I send it out. And I think some of my favorite poems have gone out to When Women Write with Beata Sigurdardóttir. She's published them. She's holding one because I mistakenly put in for the truth thing that the flowers were for Valentine's Day that I wrote about. So she's holding it till February 14, 2022 to print it. So meanwhile, I've revised. She says, I don't care if you send it somewhere else and get it printed first. So I changed that to my birthday without saying the date, and have sent it a couple other places. She said, go ahead and do that. So with her permission, I have done that. But, you know, so don't ever put a Valentine's Day in a poem. But it's about aging. It's about aging gracefully. So, you know, and then and one of the things, having been a journalist for so long, is that I understand rejection. Also, I've been an editor too. I don't really always admit that, but it was a publication for an association. It was a 4-color 100-page magazine once a month. So yeah, and you had to balance the advertisers and all of that.
Sounds like,
yeah, it was a lot of work. It was a lot more work than I thought it was.
A lot of work.
It was a lot of work. So I only did it for a year. I really couldn't take it. It was physically too hard on me. A lot of midnights and everything. But anyway, and Joey was our son was still in high school, so I was missing too much of his life. So you know, when you get the different things going, you send stuff out and the editor's going to look at it and they're going to like it or not like it, but that's not the only thing. It's also how it fits in with everything else that's going on. And maybe they even like it, but it's too long, or maybe they like it, but it's too short, or maybe they like it, but they're not doing poems about horses that month. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of reasons. And then when somebody suggests an edit to me, I'm not insulted, even in a poem, because a good editor helps you. And it's like having a critique group or reading it aloud with friends. I mean, you learn from what everybody says. And when it's something really personal, I'm still not insulted. I may not agree, but I'm certainly not insulted. And I find it odd, I have to say, when people are insulted by an editorial comment. Because you see it all the time on the internet, you know, we rejected her story and she wrote back to me and blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, what's wrong with these people? You know,
I think that your experiences have made you uniquely understanding that, you know, rejections aren't personal.
No.
And I think that that's where some people, you know, feel response is that it's something personal. And I think that it, like you said, it's a myriad of reasons why an editor will pass on a poem, and that in no way says that that poem can't be published elsewhere or isn't a good poem, or that the poet isn't a talented writer. Sometimes it's like you said, it's timing of the issue. Does it fit in nicely with what work's already been accepted? You know, is it something that would be better placed at a different time of year, like your Valentine's poem, they're going to hold it. You know, I mean, you just never know. I just got a question from Kieran. She wants you to talk about your newest book and how you selected that work that's in it now.
Okay, so I was all set. There was a free seminar on Monday of this week that I was going to attend that told you in a little, you know, everybody says, put your best work in, blah. And, you know, and also because I have so many interests, I don't have 30 poems all on one topic. Okay, so that's the other problem with being a person who's not just eclectic, but shall we say scattered. And so I did find a theme that worked, and I was pulling poems together, and all of a sudden I found that a press that I had been looking to try to send work to for months, their deadline was Sunday. No, it was Saturday, actually. So I sent them, I put the poems together and sent it out. I made a huge mistake in it when I sent it out, because, you know, you never should hurry, especially me, because I'm a terrible proofreader of my own work, which everybody is to some extent, but I think I'm worse. And so Monday, I was so bummed about having done this before the seminar that I forgot when the seminar was, and I missed it. Fortunately, those nice people sent the handouts and everything out, and I have a set of them. So I'm going to start reading that, and I've got the poems together. I sent some out, looking at the advice in there. I tried to group them, because I don't have 30 on one particular topic. I don't have 30 on my mother or 30 on my father, or the most probably, well, besides the moon, which I always have a bunch of because I'm obsessed. I have bunches that you could throw into the category of nature if you're just throwing things in, but that's kind of common, everybody does. And so what I did was I sectioned them. And I have a lot about food, and I've tried to get an editor interested in just doing a booklet on food poems. And I would give them the recipes too, because also, actually, when we moved down here, I wrote food for the Myrtle Beach Sun News for about 7 or 8 years. So I have all the recipes too. But, and And I found that whenever I give a reading, if I read one of my food poems, I always give a handout of the recipe. And people love it. I mean, marketing wise, it's a great strategy. Only one person has been semi-interested. I got a semi-finalist in Harbor Edition's latest contest when I sent them the food poems, but I didn't include, I said I can include the recipes in a separate booklet for you. Because one person I approached with the whole idea, they kind of rejected it in a day. I thought, okay, this is not really, but Harbor had a hybrid thing going on. So, well, I didn't send them to, but I'm considering sending them to a publisher in England that has small chapbooks like this, where they only do about 10 poems, and sending poem recipe. But you know, see if they'll be interested. But you know, that one costs money too to do. These all cost money, so it's hard to, you know, keep sending that out to be that way. But I do offer, all of my poems have a section that deals with food and family. All of my books. The one that I'm working on now, I'm calling it Savor the Moment, because the one thread that does go through all of these is that it's a moment in time that I've tried to capture, whether it's in nature, whether it's with a painting, whether it's with an item of food that I've eaten, or watching my family enjoy, or, you know, sitting at our table, which we had to give up when we moved, and, you know, things like that. So that was the joining force. And I put together about 50 poems, and I've sent it out. So, but I'm still refining it, working on it. I don't know. I'm kind of shy about sending it to the North Carolina presses. They're kind of dream presses for me. I'd love to have Press 53, or, you know, those people look at my work, but I haven't. I've held back from sending it to them. Isn't that awful? That's awful. That shows you my shy side.
Well, I was going to say, I think that what you're saying there is what a lot of poets relate to, that kind of shy side. And, you know, Press 53 has a fabulous open contest for, you know, for things like that. And so does Main Street Rag. And there's a lot, you know, it's Jakar Press. There's a lot of really great.
Richard will never book of mine. No, I love, I know I'm a fairly good poet, but I'm not, I don't get offended that I haven't been nominated for a push card. I mean, yeah, this is not a matter of offense. I mean, I'd be, oh my gosh, I'd be opening champagne if I ever were, but I'm not offended that no one has, you know, has taken that step. But I also feel that, what was I going to say? What was the second point? What did you just ask me, Malika?
We were talking about, you know, knowing where our work fits and sending to the right places, and knowing, you know, that when I want to send to a magazine, it's because I've read what they publish and I go, I love this stuff. If I read, you know, a magazine and I say, well, this is, you know, not my cup of tea, that's a place
then
that
you don't send it. Yeah. And that's why I do try to, like, I feel that possibly I would have an opportunity at Press 53 or Main Street Rag sometime, because they do publish some work that's similar to mine. They're open to a lot, you know, wider range of softer poets.
And it's a wide range of poets. I mean, both of them.
Yes. And so, you know, I'll get over my shyness possibly and throw something their way. But I mean, if they don't accept me, I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to come home and cry about it. I'll try again.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have that attitude. Well, I know if people would like to unmute, we could take a moment to say, yay. Laura said, I'm so sorry I have to leave, but thank you, Joan.
Thank you all for coming. I feel bad that I monopolized conversation.
Yeah, that's how we do it. We just kind of chat and questions and answers. Occasionally we do open mic, but we also have had nights that we said, no, we didn't get to it, and that's okay. Thank you so much.
This was so much fun tonight.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I'm very excited about the storytelling. That's really up my alley. That's something really fascinating to me. I've been trying to develop that.
That's what I was gonna say. I could
Ability.
totally see you
Yeah.
taking off with that, Celestine.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I just love that idea. I think I sent you something on your site. So hopefully, just I want to hear more about your storytelling. Your
On my
storytelling
Facebook
ability.
page, you sent me a
Yeah.
note? Okay.
Yes, I sure did.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that I friend you,
Okay.
because
Awesome.
I've been holding back from friending people because there's so many scam things going
Yes,
out
there is.
right
Yes, there
now.
is.
And
Mhm.
so I will make sure I friend you so that we can then communicate more freely over the messenger thing, and I'll give you my email and everything. I mean, you're all welcome to have my email. It's easy. It's Joan
So right
Leotta
now
at
I'm looking at on
gmail.com.
my phone, and I don't know how. I've been trying to save the chat. I can't find how to save the chat on my phone.
Oh,
So
I can never do that. I could never.
Well, if y'all get in touch via Facebook, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And Joan, you said it's an easy email.
Yes, it's my name and then at gmail.com.
Oh, there you go. Thank
You
you.
Okay.
just have to remember that Leotta is with an E, Leotta.
So
And
all small caps.
all small, all small
Okay.
letters, yeah, no caps,
No space. All right.
at Gmail. So
Well,
Okay.
wonderful to see y'all once again on a Thursday. Thank you, Joan.
Absolutely.
thank you so much for having me.
pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
It's a lot of-
Nice to see all of you
enjoyed
in
it.
an intimate atmosphere.
Yes. Be well, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.